I never expected something as simple as buying pastries to change everything. But when his hands found mine across the counter, flour dusting our fingers, I knew this morning was about to become anything but ordinary. The warmth of his touch sent electricity through me, and when he leaned closer, whispering about showing me something special in the back, my heart raced with anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Hey, if you're enjoying this already, do me a favor, hit that like button, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what's got you hooked so far. Walter had left early for his analyst job. Same routine as always. Coffee at 6, shower at 6:15, out the door by 7, with barely a goodbye kiss on my cheek. Married 15 years, and we'd settled into this comfortable numbness that felt more like roommates than lovers. I told myself it was normal, that passion fades, that this was just what marriage looked like after a certain point. But standing in my empty kitchen, still, in my silk robe, I felt restless, different, like something was stirring beneath the surface of my carefully constructed life. I needed air, movement, something to break the monotony. The neighborhood bakery seemed perfect. I'd grab some fresh croissants, maybe treat myself to something sweet. The morning air was crisp as I walked the 3 blocks to Flour and Fire, the Iowa's little artisan bakery that had opened 6 months ago. I'd been there a few times, always impressed by their authentic French pastries, but today felt different. Today, I took my time getting ready, choosing a flowing dress that hugged my curves, letting my auburn hair fall loose around my shoulders. The bell chimed as I pushed through the glass door, and the rich scent of fresh bread and butter wrapped around me like a warm embrace. Behind the counter stood someone I hadn't seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and olive skin dusted with flour. His eyes found mine immediately, and something passed between us, a recognition that had nothing to do with having met before. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying just a hint of an accent, Italian maybe. "I'm Fabio. What can I tempt you with today?" The way he said tempt made my pulse quicken. I approached the counter, suddenly very aware of how the morning light was catching in my dress, how his gaze followed the movement of my hips. "I was hoping for some croissants," I said, my voice softer than intended. "And maybe something unexpected." His smile was slow, knowing. "I have just the thing, but the best ones are in the back. Would you like to see?" I should have said no, should have taken whatever was in the display case and walked back to my safe, predictable life. Instead, I nodded, watching as he came around the counter, his movements confident and fluid. He led me through a doorway marked "Employees Only" into the warm heart of the bakery. Ovens lined one wall, their heat making the air thick and intimate. Wooden tables covered in flour held cooling racks of pastries that looked like edible art. "This is where the magic happens," he said, stopping beside a table laden with golden croissants. "These just came out, still warm." He picked one up, tearing it gently to show the flaky layers inside. Steam rose from the break, and he held it toward me. "Taste." I leaned forward, letting him feed me the piece. The buttery pastry melted on my tongue, rich and perfect, but it was the way his fingers brushed my lips that made me gasp softly. His eyes darkened as he watched my reaction. "Good?" he asked, stepping closer. "Incredible," I whispered, and we both knew I wasn't just talking about the croissant. The space between us seemed to crackle with electricity. I could smell his cologne mixed with flour and something uniquely him. When he reached up to brush a crumb from the corner of my mouth, I didn't pull away. "Emily," I said suddenly, realizing we hadn't exchanged names. "Beautiful, Emily," he murmured, his thumb still resting against my cheek. "I was hoping you'd come in today." "You were? I've seen you walking past. Always wondered what you were thinking about, looking so serious, so contained." His words stirred something deep inside me. When had anyone last wondered what I was thinking? When had Walter last looked at me with this kind of focused attention? "Maybe I was thinking about croissants," I said, trying for lightness but hearing the breathiness in my own voice. "Maybe," he agreed, his hand sliding down to rest against my neck, thumb tracing my pulse point. "But I think you were thinking about something else. Something you want but haven't let yourself have." He was right, and the knowledge of it sent heat spiraling through me. I was thinking about feeling alive again, about being desired, about the thrill of possibility. "We shouldn't," I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. "Probably not," he agreed, his other hand coming to rest on my waist. "But sometimes the best things are the ones we shouldn't do." When he kissed me, it was nothing like the perfunctory pecks Walter and I exchanged. This kiss was hungry, searching, full of promise and heat. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his flour-dusted apron as 15 years of suppressed desire came rushing to the surface. He backed me against the wooden table, his mouth never leaving mine, and I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. His hands roamed my body with reverent appreciation, as if he was memorizing every curve. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against my neck, his lips trailing fire along my skin. "So responsive. Does your husband know how lucky he is?" The mention of Walter should have stopped me cold, but instead it only intensified the forbidden thrill. This was dangerous, reckless, everything my careful life wasn't supposed to include. "He's forgotten," I admitted, arching as Fabio's mouth found the sensitive spot where my neck met my shoulder. "Then he's a fool," Fabio said fiercely, his hands sliding up my thighs, gathering the fabric of my dress. "A beautiful woman like you should be worshipped, treasured, made to feel like a goddess." His words were intoxicating, and when his fingers found the edge of my silky undergarments, I didn't stop him. The cool air against my heated skin made me gasp, and he swallowed the sound with another deep kiss. "Tell me you want this," he said, his forehead pressed against mine, both of us breathing hard. "I want this," I whispered, surprised by the certainty in my voice. "I want you." What followed was unlike anything I'd experienced. He lifted me onto the table with surprising gentleness, his strong hands steady and sure. The flower beneath me was soft and cool, contrasting with the heat of his body as he pressed closer. He took his time, his mouth mapping every inch of exposed skin, his hands learning the landscape of my body with patient devotion. When he finally joined with me, it was with a rhythm that built slowly, intensely, each movement deliberate and consuming. I lost myself in the sensation, in the way he moved against me with such focused intensity. The sounds of the busy street outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the heat between us, the whispered endearments in Italian, the way he said my name like a prayer. The tension built between us, coiling tighter with each shared breath, each shift of movement. When the release finally came, it crashed over me in waves that left me trembling and gasping. My fingers dug into his shoulders as he followed me over the edge with a low groan that I felt vibrate through his chest. For several moments, we stayed, entwined, our breathing slowly returning to normal. The reality of what we'd done began to settle over me, but instead of regret, I felt awakened, alive in a way I hadn't been in years. "That was," I began, then trailed off, not having words, for what it was. "Necessary," he finished, his lips pressing gentle kisses to my temple, like breathing. He helped me down from the table, his touch still reverent as he smoothed my dress back into place. I felt different, transformed somehow, like I was seeing the world through new eyes. "I should go," I said, though every part of me wanted to stay, in this warm, flower-scented sanctuary where I felt so completely myself. "I know," he said, but he didn't let go of my hand. "But Emily, this doesn't have to be the only time." He pressed something into my palm, a small piece of paper with his number written in careful script. "When you're ready for more croissants," he said with a smile that made my knees weak. I walked home in a daze, hyper-aware of every sensation, the way my dress moved against my skin, the lingering scent of flower and desire that clung to me, the way my body still hummed with satisfaction. I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. Walter was exactly where I'd left him in my mind, at his desk, absorbed in spreadsheets and data analysis. When I slipped back into our house, he called out a distracted greeting from his home office, not even looking up from his computer. "Got some nice pastries," I called back, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. My voice sounded normal, casual, giving no hint of the earth-shattering experience I'd just had. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and paused. My cheeks were flushed, my lips slightly swollen, my eyes bright with a satisfaction I hadn't seen there in years. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly loved, and the knowledge sent another thrill through me. In the bathroom, I splashed cool water on my face and finger-combed my hair, trying to compose myself. But every time I closed my eyes, I could feel Fabio's hands on my skin, could hear his voice murmuring my name with such reverence. The piece of paper with his number felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I pulled it out, studying the careful digits, wondering what would happen if I called. Would he answer? Would he want to see me again? Or had this morning been just a pleasant diversion for him? Everything okay in there?" Walter's voice from the hallway made me jump. "Fine," I called back, quickly tucking the paper into my jewelry box. "Just washing up." When I emerged, he was waiting in the bedroom, and for a moment I wondered if he could see the change in me, if it was written across my face in letters too bold to ignore. "You seem different today," he said, tilting his head. "Brighter somehow." My heart hammered in my chest. "Do I? Maybe it's just the nice weather." He nodded absently, already turning back toward his office. "The pastries smell good. Thanks for picking them up." And just like that, the moment passed. He didn't see the transformation in me, didn't notice the glow or the satisfaction, or the way I felt like an entirely different woman than the one who'd left the house that morning. I spent the rest of the day in a strange state of hyper-awareness. Every mundane task, folding laundry, preparing lunch, watering the plants, felt different, charged with new meaning. I kept catching myself smiling for no reason, or pausing in the middle of stirring soup to remember the feel of Fabio's hands. That evening, as Walter and I sat at our usual spots at the dinner table, I studied his familiar face. When had we stopped really seeing each other? When had our conversations become limited to schedules and household logistics? "How was your day?" he asked, cutting into his chicken with mechanical precision. "Interesting," I said, and it was the truth, though not in any way he would imagine. Good, good. My day was pretty standard. The Morrison account is giving us some trouble, but I think I've found a solution." He launched into a detailed explanation of quarterly projections and client management strategies, and I nodded at appropriate intervals while my mind wandered back to flour-dusted hands and whispered Italian endearments. Was this what the rest of my life would look like? Polite conversations about work and weather while passion slowly died inside me? Or had this morning awakened something that couldn't be put back to sleep? That night, as Walter settled into bed beside me with his usual routine, brief kiss, mumbled goodnight, immediate turn toward his own side, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. His breathing soon settled into the steady rhythm of sleep, but I felt more awake than I had in years. I thought about Fabio's words. Sometimes the best things are the ones we shouldn't do. Was he right? And if so, what did that mean for my carefully constructed life? The next morning followed the same pattern. Walter's early departure, my restless energy, the pull toward something more than my routine allowed. I found myself dressing, with extra care again, choosing a soft sweater that highlighted my eyes, taking time with my makeup. I told myself I was just going to the grocery store, that I needed milk and vegetables, nothing more. But my feet carried me past the supermarket and straight to Flour and Fire. Fabio was behind the counter again, and when he saw me, his face lit up with a smile that made my stomach flip. "Emily," he said warmly, like my name was a gift he'd been waiting to unwrap. "I was hoping I'd see you today. I was just in the neighborhood," I said weakly. "Of course," he agreed, but his eyes twinkled with knowing amusement. "What can I get for you today? More croissants?" The way he said it, loaded with meaning and memory, made heat pool low in my stomach. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I was wondering if you had any of those special pastries again, the ones in the back." His smile turned slow and devastating. "For you? Always." This time, when he led me to the back room, there was no pretense of actually looking at pastries. The moment we were out of sight, he pulled me into his arms, his mouth finding mine with hungry certainty. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he murmured against my lips. "About yesterday morning, about how you felt in my arms." "I know," I whispered back. "I tried to forget, tried to go back to normal, but I can't." "Then don't," he said simply. "Be here with me. Be real." And so I was. For the second time in 2 days, I let myself be swept away by desire and possibility. This time we moved to a small office behind the kitchen, where he cleared his desk with one sweep of his arm and lifted me onto it. The encounter was different from the day before, more urgent, more desperate, as if we both knew this stolen. Time was precious and fleeting. When it was over, we clung to each other, neither wanting to break the spell. "I have to go," I said eventually, though it was the last thing I wanted to do. "I know," he said, pressing kisses to my throat. "But, Emily, I meant what I said. This doesn't have to end here." I pulled back to look at him, seeing something in his dark eyes that made my chest tight. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to see you again. Not just for this," he gestured to our entwined bodies. "Though this is incredible. I want to know you, talk to you, take you places where we don't have to hide." The word hide hit me like a slap. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Hiding, sneaking around, living a lie. "I'm married," I said, as if he needed reminding. "I know," he said gently. "But are you happy?" The question hung between us, impossible to answer easily. Was I happy? I'd thought I was, or at least content. But these past 2 mornings had shown me a different kind of joy, a different way of feeling alive. "It's complicated," I said finally. "Life usually is," he agreed. "But some things are simple, like how I feel when I look at you, like how you light up when you're with me." He was right, and we both knew it. But knowing something and acting on it were 2 very different things. "I need time," I said. "To think." "Take all the time you need," he said, though I could see the disappointment flicker across his features. "But don't take so long that you forget how this feels." I walked home in turmoil, my body satisfied but my mind spinning with implications and possibilities. What was I doing? What did I want? And how could I possibly choose between the safe predictability of my marriage and the intoxicating uncertainty of whatever this was with Fabio? Walter was home early that evening, and he seemed more attentive than usual, asking about my day, complimenting my appearance, even suggesting we watch a movie together. Was it guilt that made me read more into his gestures, or was he actually making an effort? As we sat on the couch, his arm around my shoulders, I tried to focus on the comfort of familiarity, the security of our shared history. This was my husband, my partner of 15 years. We'd built a life together, had shared dreams and goals, and quiet moments of contentment. But when he kissed me goodnight, it felt like kissing a friend. Pleasant, warm, but lacking the fire that Fabio had ignited in me with just a look. That night, I dreamed of flower-dusted hands and whispered Italian words, of feeling beautiful and desired and completely alive. I woke with tears on my cheeks, not sure if they were from joy or sorrow. The pattern continued for a week, Fabio's number burning in my jewelry box, my days divided between the comfortable routine of marriage and the magnetic pull of possibility. I found excuses to walk past the bakery, sometimes catching glimpses of him through the window, our eyes meeting with electric recognition. But I didn't go in. Couldn't bring myself to cross that threshold again when I had no idea what I was walking toward. It was Friday when everything changed. Walter came home from work looking troubled, his usual distracted cheerfulness replaced by something heavier. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting down the book I'd been pretending to read. He sat heavily in his chair, running his hands through his graying hair. "I've been offered a promotion," he said. "That's wonderful," I said automatically, then caught the tone of his voice. "Isn't it? It would mean relocating to Seattle. The position starts in 6 weeks." The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, I would be 3,000 miles away from the bakery, from Fabio, from the possibility of choosing a different kind of life. "Seattle," I repeated, numbly. "I know it's sudden," Walter said, mistaking my shock for concern about the logistics, "but it's a huge opportunity. The salary increase alone would let us buy that house we've been talking about, maybe take those trips to Europe we've been planning." Had we been planning trips to Europe? I couldn't remember. Everything about our shared future seemed hazy suddenly, overshadowed by the clarity of what I might be losing. "You haven't given them an answer yet, have you?" I asked. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. But, this is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come along twice." I nodded, trying to process the information. A promotion for Walter, a fresh start for both of us, a chance to revitalize our marriage in a new city. It should have felt exciting. Instead, all I could think about was Fabio's smile, the way he said my name, the possibility of discovering who I might become if I allowed myself to follow this new path. "I need some air," I said, standing abruptly, "to think about this." "Of course," Walter said, looking relieved that I wasn't immediately objecting. "Take your time. We don't have to decide tonight." But as I walked through the darkening streets, I realized that I did have to decide, not just about Seattle, but about what kind of life I wanted to live. Safe and predictable, or uncertain, but alive with possibility. My feet carried me without conscious decision to Flower and Fire. The bakery was closed, but I could see light in the back office. Fabio's silhouette was visible through the frosted glass, and before I could lose my nerve, I knocked. He opened the door immediately as if he'd been waiting for me. "Emily," he said, and the way he said my name, with such warmth and longing, nearly undid me. "My husband got a promotion," I said without preamble. "We're moving to Seattle in 6 weeks." Fabio's face went carefully blank. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "Is it?" I asked. "Is it congratulations, or is it the end of whatever this is between us?" He studied my face for a long moment, then stepped aside to let me in. The back room was warm and dimly lit, smelling of tomorrow's bread rising. "What do you want it to be?" he asked when we were alone. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's why I'm here, to figure it out." He nodded slowly. "Then let me ask you something else. In 15 years, when you look back on this moment, what will you regret more? Taking a chance on something real or playing it safe?" The question cut right to the heart of my dilemma. Because I knew, with sudden crystal clarity, that I would regret not exploring this connection with him, would regret never knowing what we might have been together. "I can't ask you to wait for me," I said. "Can't ask you to build your life around the possibility that I might choose you over him." "You're not asking," Fabio said, stepping closer. "I'm choosing. Emily, in 3 days I've felt more with you than I've felt in years with anyone else. That's not something I can just walk away from. Even if it means 6 weeks of uncertainty, even if it means I might choose my marriage in the end, even then," he said without hesitation, "because what we have is worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for." His certainty was intoxicating, and when he kissed me this time, it felt like a promise of possibility, of passion, of a life lived fully rather than safely. 6 weeks, I whispered against his lips. 6 weeks, he agreed, to decide what you really want. What happened next was inevitable, urgent, touched with the desperation of limited time. We made love with an intensity that left us both shaken, clinging to each other as if we could stop time through the force of our connection alone. Later, as I walked home through the quiet streets, I felt the weight of the decision before me. 6 weeks to choose between security and passion, between the familiar and the unknown. But for the first time in years, I felt truly alive with the possibility of choice. Whatever I decided, it would be my decision, made with full awareness of what I was choosing and what I was leaving behind. The paper with Fabio's number was no longer burning in my jewelry box. Now it felt like a lifeline, a connection to a version of myself I was only beginning to discover. 6 weeks. It wasn't much time, but maybe it would be enough to figure out who I really was and what kind of life I wanted to live. As I slipped back into bed beside my sleeping husband, I realized that the woman who had first walked into that bakery a week ago was gone. In her place was someone braver, more aware, more willing to face difficult truths. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. The question now was whether I had the courage to move forward. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you choose? Security or passion? The familiar or the unknown? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next.